ماما هذا شفيق.
نعم.
بابا
كيفك؟
كتير حكتني عنك.
أنا أمها شيء طبيعي. عندي بنت ودنيا هي الأكسجين اللي أنا كنت تنفسي. ودنيا هي الأكسجين اللي أنا كنت تنفسي.
أنا my only concern is يعني إنه ماما يعجبها البيت. كنت أتمنى إنه تكون معايا ماما بقلبي تسمع لي وتعطيني أحلى نصائح.
4 hour chatting with the mom. I take the decision. It's not my mom who take the decision for me or my dad take the decision. There is something you and the mom you have to cut.
ما نخلق the person who is going to separate me from her.
شوف شفيق وحياة الله مثل ما يقولوا اللبنانيين وتكسر كبرياء بنتي. Si tu joues sur les sentiments de la vie.
Non. Moi tu sais.
Because our deepest fear is that our children will feel pain. But guess what? Nothing hurts our children more than to have a parent who is unable to witness their pain. A parent who is unable to witness the child's pain because of the parent's own unresolved issues around pain, failure, disappointment.
That was me lip-syncing to the therapist Shafali Sabari. She writes and talks a lot about conscious parenting. How basically you as a parent, anytime you feel uncomfortable around your child, you have to look within and investigate what is it about you that's feeling uncomfortable right now? What is the child triggering in you? Basically that our children are a mirror. And I was really reminded of that when I was watching Love is Blind HABIBI, and basically the intense bond between Dunya and her overprotective mother. I was really getting Enmeshed family vibes. If you've been a fan of my channel before I started talking about Palestine, you know I used to review religiously the Love is Blind, and what I would do is analyze the episodes and pick a therapist to lip sync to, a therapist who talks about the themes that stood out for me in the episodes. And basically I would always center my analysis around the character that I can project my own stuff on, a character that reminds me of myself. And in this video I'm gonna get into my experience with enmeshed family dynamics. But before that, I want to tell you that Dunya stood out to me even before the enmeshed family dynamic thing stood out as well. She said something early on in the season that really resonated with me.
أكيد أنا قلبي يعني حطت له 50,000 لوك بس يوم ينفتحوا لوكات يعني الله يستر.
This fear of letting your heart feel the love you know you're capable of feeling, the enormous amount of love. I relate to that. The need to love, but in equal measure, the fear of that need to love. And interestingly, this fear of love and fear of letting your heart feel all the stuff and the choice to stay cocooned and sheltered and safe, I find goes hand in hand with coming from an enmeshed family dynamic where you're just like safe with your family and refusing to build anything with anyone outside. And before I get into all this enmeshed family stuff, I really want to say how special this review of Love is Blind is, because it's Love is Blind HABIBI.
يلا.
What do you think about your career?
شو انترفيو شغال؟
Not only is it personal because I'm Arabic, as you know, or maybe you don't know, I'm half Lebanese, half Palestinian, but also this Love is Blind was filmed in Dubai, where I grew up. So it's not only Arabic HABIBI, it's westernized HABIBI, it's Americanized HABIBI. And what really stood out is how bilingual and sometimes trilingual the characters are. And this really reminded me of my upbringing in Dubai, which is so typical of Arab expats living in Dubai. You speak half English, half Arabic to your parents, and you're always being made fun of. Like, you can't even string one full sentence in Arabic together. And we're always made fun of by the more traditional Arabs. And I really saw myself in these people.
عربي تبعي مكسر شوي لأنه I'm French educated بس عامل جهدي لأحكي عربي معك.
I'm French educated too.
Really?
حتى أنا العربي حقي مكسر.
And there's something interesting as well that comes with being a westernized Arab. A little bit of shame. You have to hide that side of yourself when you meet with more traditional relatives. And there was a scene with Shafi, Dunya's fiance, when he was going to his grandparents to introduce Dunya to them. He took off his earrings. I was like, okay, this is familiar.
أول step لازم يشيل.
Not that I do that anymore because I cross-dress on the internet for all to see. But back in the day. But this is not the focus of this video. The focus of this video is Dunya and her relationship with Shafi, and specifically the triangle with her and Shafi and her mother, and how enmeshed she is with her mother, and how enmeshed her mother is with her. Like, they talk about it as if it's good, that they're just one.
بالنسبة لي أنا كنت عايشة مثل القطة اللي حاطة البيبي حقها في سنونها وبتلف، يعني ما حد ياخد مني بنتي. يعني ما كنت أتوقع إن في يوم من الأيام إنه حيجي أحد ياخد مني أنا بنتي.
And as cute and quirky as that sounds, like she's a cat with a kitten in her mouth, it's actually very traumatic when you think about it. She thinks of herself as a stray cat with a kitten running around frantically. What? Especially the part of her saying not wanting anyone to take her daughter away. And by the way, Shafiq noticed.
I'm sure we're gonna match together. But the only stuff like إنه بيخوفني شوي لأنه she's very 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 close with Emma. So I don't know كيف حتعيش the fact that they're gonna live separate.
And I want to stress again that when I talk about enmeshed family dynamics and unresolved trauma, a lot of this is projection. Because like anybody analyzing stuff on the internet of people they've never met in person, you're talking a lot about yourself as well. So I acknowledge that. And speaking of which, I'm going to drop on my channel next month a video recording of my show all about me and my mother, where I play my mother and myself and my father and get into all my family history. That's going to be really juicy. That's coming the end of December. And by the way, before we dive into Dunya and Shafi and Dunya's mother, I want to say that I have a lot to say about these cast members. And if you want me to make a separate video about them, please drop me a line, because this one, he's so petty and passive-aggressive, and I don't know if he's heterosexual. Okay? Whenever he's making fun of Noor, بتعمل كده وتعملي كده وإيه ده وإيه. No, حبيبي, مش على بابا يا ماما. I see you, bitch. And also this one, who is somehow in Delulu land thinking he's a traditional Middle Eastern man while strutting on the beach naked with under the shower. What? I mean, you have a beautiful body, and I would show it too if I looked like that. But stop talking about like you need a traditional woman when you're not even acting like a traditional man.
يا رجل أنا عربي شرقي لا أقبله ولا بيزبط إنه أنت تقولي لي إنه والله هذا حياتي. فأنا ما بقبل إنه مرتي ومسابقة تكون رقاصة. سوري مني. ما بقبل إيه.
And someone else that really stood out this season, I can make a separate video about, is Kareem. It went unnoticed because he didn't go all the way in the experiment, but he is so numb to love and afraid to love.
The older I get, the harder it is to feel, you know?
And I have a lot to say about that. This is, by the way, my upcoming show, which, by the way, if you're in Amsterdam, I'm playing it in December. It's all about fear of intimacy. But anyway, write me in the comments if you want more videos of Love is Blind Habibi. Because in the meantime, I'm also going to make videos about Palestine, more videos. The upcoming one is about Hind Rajab. But after that, I can make some others as well about Love is Blind. Now let's get back to Dunya and Shafi, and specifically how enmeshed she is. Because what I titled the video is Enmeshed Upbringing leads to enmeshed kind of romance as well, and codependence. Because if you notice, when they were preparing for the wedding and picking out the flowers and the different things, he was really dominating the situation, and she was just sitting there like a child, like letting him have it. Like, she's way too comfortable with being controlled.
فينا نعمله أقل ورد. شو بتحبوا أنتوا أكثر؟
أنت تحب over ولا تحب شوي simple؟
Non, pas trop, avec ça.
Okay. دورينا الطاولة.
Okay, what do you think?
حبيت إنه لهلا متفقين على كل شيء. أنتوا هيك دايما بالحياة هيك متفقين سوا.
Almost the time, yeah.
nice. ليش أخذتي وقت الجواب؟
And also how she views Ammar, the very controlling, possessive guy. Because at the reunion, when it came up again, how misogynist he was towards Karma, Dunya chimes in and she's like, "Hey, ya bint btitmanna," like any girl would love to have him.
أي واحدة تتمنى عمار.
No. You would love to have a controlling guy like that. Because perhaps you were controlled growing up. I don't know. And this is not a diss at her mother. Like, a lot of overprotective, like helicopter parents, because out of their own fears, they do that to their kids. And I really believe that Dunya's comfort with being like just one with her parent has bled into her being just kind of one with her partner. And just like, it's me and him against the world. Which is something that happens a lot in enmeshed family dynamics. When your parent makes you believe that it's you and them against the world, you grow up thinking that that's what it's going to be like in romance as well. Basically, it's this idea where you don't know where one begins and the other ends. It's like you're just one. Which, now is as good a time as any to get into what enmeshment actually means. Because it's different than being close. Like, being close and intimate with someone is beautiful. But closeness needs to have healthy boundaries. When there are no boundaries, that's when it becomes enmeshment. In an enmeshed family, parents often control the children through emotional manipulation. And this can happen because the parents are so reliant on emotional support from their children and they subconsciously prevent them from growth outside the dynamic with the parent. And in a bit, we'll get into why that could be the case for Dunya's mom. But whatever the reason for why you're enmeshed with your child, this closeness starts off as something good, but then later it becomes something that prevents them from growing.
دنيا من يوم تولدت من يوم طلعت من هنا وهي هنا.
So why is this enmeshment unhealthy? We all have a psychological need to be independent. But in an enmeshed family dynamic, This need to be independent is quashed. Independence is the right to make your own choices, to separate and find your own path in life separate from your family. This need continues to grow as we grow up, from childhood to adolescence, and then we can just separate and form our own healthy relationships. And continue to be close to our family, but we become separate people. Still connected, but not enmeshed, not melting into the other person. And when you grow up with this need to be independent that is not met, you start thinking it's okay to just melt into the other person. It's okay for you not to have your own life. You can even start feeling guilty for separating. And throughout my life, if I'm being honest, because I come from an enmeshed family where we're very close, and I love my family. This is not a critique, it's just an observation. But when you come from that kind of family, you start to feel guilty for maybe going off and having your own relationship. You're doing something wrong. Some examples of what it's like to be in an enmeshed family dynamic. As a teenager, for example, you're made to feel guilty for going off to doing your own thing. Or you're made to feel guilty for wanting to move away. You're selfish for wanting that. Or another example, if you decide to become vegetarian or something that the rest of the family doesn't do, you're made to feel like you're stupid, to be something else. So some signs of enmeshment. You believe you don't have the right to your own privacy. You don't have secrets from your parents. You feel responsible for the happiness and peace of mind of others. Now look, it's different from wanting your loved ones to be happy. That's beautiful. But when you feel responsible, it's your responsibility for how someone's mood is, that becomes unhealthy. And I noticed when Dunya was talking to her sister was reminding her that Dunya has to make the right choice because the wrong choice could hurt her mom. As if having a bad marriage, the main focus of it is not hurting the mom and not Dunya herself.
يعني خذي القرار الصحيح لأن من هنا لقدام إذا وقعت شي حاجة ما تضريش بوحدك كل شيء غيضر وبالأخص ماما.
And it was very interesting to see the sisters talk to each other because usually this enmeshed family dynamic spreads across the entire family. Everybody feels the same kind of guilt. Another sign of enmeshment, your parents starts acting like they're your best friend. I know that sounds really cute, but it's actually inappropriate. A parent should have their own best friend. Go get your own best friend, babe. Because you're relying on your child for emotional support. No. It reminds me of that scene from Mean Girls where her mom, the mom, she's like, you girls keep me young.
Is there alcohol in it?
Why do you want a little bit? Because if you're going to drink, I'd rather you do it in the house. Okay. You girls keep me young. Ugh, I love you so much.
Let's talk about some common roles in an enmeshed family dynamic. Roles that are assigned to the child. Like the golden child or the trophy child. The one who's groomed to be a success. Or the surrogate child. The child who's given the role of the emotional partner of the parent. Those roles are very interesting because to the outside world, it looks like they're great because you're appreciated and loved by your family. But actually, those can be psychologically damaging because they're unhealthy. Because the love is usually wrapped in an unconscious ploy to keep the child in and fulfill the unmet need of the parent. Again, this is not evil or done with a no, it's just done so unconsciously. And typically kids or people who are put in that role as kids don't know that it's bad and actually will get very defensive if you point it out. Like the part where Shafiq was pointing out to Dunya that we can't be, a triangular relationship with your mom. And she got really defensive and she started going on about how معاش رح يفرقني بيني وبين أمي, which she said that I put in the opening montage of this video, but she said it more than once. It's a very dramatic line, معاش أو من خلق. The person who's going to separate me from my mom wasn't even born. Arabic is such a dramatic language and very poetic, which is beautiful, but that line was
والله لسه ما خلق الشخص اللي بيفرقني عنك. مستحيل. احنا إنسان واحد.
And by the way, in the enmeshed family dynamic, there's also the role of the scapegoat. That's the punching bag. But this doesn't apply to Dunya, so we're going to skip it. But that role is... it's the problem child. Lucky he or she who ends up getting that role. Wow. Yikes. But I really think Dunya, if indeed there's an enmeshed family dynamic going on, because again, this is my projection. Calm down, people. Relax. I believe she has the role of the surrogate child, where she's playing the emotional partner of the parent.
I come from a background where Ummi was my dad and my mom and everything for me. I have a broken shoulder, okay?
And when you hear that, you really start to see Dunya as someone who's really infantilized. She is really like a baby. But she gives this vibe. She even talks about herself as a child.
الchild اللي جواتي ونفس الchild اللي جواتي. فهذا أكثر شيء خلاني إنه I connect with her.
And you could say this is really cute because she's talking about her inner child and his inner child. But no, there is something about her that's very childlike.
وانت يا دنيا تخيلتي نفسك كنت صغيرة بفستان العرس؟
ايوه انا كنت اتفرج في الديزني موفيز وكنت دايما ابغى اكون سندريلا.
And it's important to highlight here that Dunya isn't the only one in the world who thinks of love in this kind of fairy tales and frogs turning into princes when they get kissed.
And the frog prince who must be magically exterminated, the frog in us all, by this magical kiss again, because love apparently conquers everything, I'm told.
And the reason why we escape to these fairy tales is because we want to avoid pain, right? The pain that comes from knowing that life isn't the fantasy that we wanted it to be.
Pain leaves a stain. Pain must be painted over, for it cracks our sense of self almost, leaving it in a million shards. Not shards that you can just leave on the roadside, if only we were so lucky. No, but the shards, they prick our footsteps every walking minute, bleeding, reminding us that we are broken, broken, broken. Life wasn't supposed to be this way. This is what they told us as children, that life was this fairy tale.
Hey y'all, it's In Denial. Your drag therapist. As I always say, I'm in denial, so you can wake up. And by the way, check this out. One of my subscribers, Rebecca Bloom from the US, made this for me. She actually was in one of my documentaries about Zionism that I made a couple of months ago. I'll link it here. What have you made for me, huh? I know how you can make it up. You can come to my show in December. Tickets link below. Crack it, bitch! By the way, that was me again lip-syncing to Shefali Sabari. As I said in the beginning, Shefali Sabari is a therapist specialized in conscious parenting and the concept of this awakened family. And my thoughts on family dynamics has been very much influenced by her work. How children come into the world to reflect us back to us, which is why I don't want to have children. I don't want to see my reflection, bitch. Sue me. But on a serious note, I discovered Shefali's work when I was finally ready to start self-reflecting. And this self-reflection, as painful as it is, especially in the beginning, when you're out of practice, if you've been living in denial, like you can't really do it. But once you start getting the hang of it, it remains difficult, but you start knowing how to manage it. And it has good stuff, because this whole drag career of mine that just suddenly boomed, and my channel and my theater shows came because I started finally being able to look at myself honestly. And by the way, if you want a taste of that, I also coach in creativity. I'm linking it below the website. You can check out what I do. I give like creativity boost courses, so... But the reason I chose enmeshment as a theme to focus on in this video is because it has long-term effects on how you handle love, or how incapable you are of handling love, which again is a theme that I'm dealing with at the moment. And I strongly believe that the first long-term relationship you have is a replication of what you grew up seeing and knowing. Because I've only had one serious long-term relationship, and it was amazing in many ways, but it was also a reflection of this enmeshment as well, and not being very honest with yourself. And I feel like Dunya, Shafi, is her first relationship. Well, it's not what I feel, it's what she said. And this inexperience and naivety you can really see with her. It's kind of cute, but it's like, wow, you really are a baby. Like when he proposed to her in the pods.
Today, I choose you to be my partner in adventure.
There is no kiss from another that will save you from your own dark, deep shadow.
And this enmeshed, underdeveloped identity of Dunya can really be seen in how, like, when you look at what she does for a living, content creator, like... Yours truly. What the fuck? Told you, this is all projection. Again, not a diss on like all content creators, but there's a certain like hollowness going on, which I see in myself. But by the way, thanks to Palestine, like before Palestine came along into my kind of like now being as something at the forefront of what I do, I feel like I love everything I've done and I'm very proud of it, but like I suddenly feel like I have meaning in my life. The way people talk about when they have kids. But anyway, another sign in Dunya of this kind of undeveloped, kind of like childlike identity is how confused she is about her boundaries and relationships. Like there was a part when they were at the resort honeymoon type of thing, when she was mad that Shafiq was flirting with Noor, clearly flirting with Noor, but she was having like cognitive dissonance, like she didn't want to face that, so she was like, I'm confused, and she was crying, she took him aside and they were arguing. She didn't want to like face that, she's like, I don't know what I feel, and it was very childlike.
J'aime pas parce que je comprends pas.
Je comprends pas quoi, qu'est-ce qu'il y a?
Je comprends pas, c'est tout. Tu comprends pas quoi?
And another sign of this enmeshed identity is this exaggerated sense of responsibility and obligation she has. If you remember, there was a part where she was talking with Shafi and she was telling him about like, I would rather die or bleed to death than break a promise. And this is what my mother taught me. It's like, calm down, girl.
My mom ربتني إنه if I say a promise ولو ينقطع جسمي والدم يسيل بقوم وبروح عشان أنفذها.
Yes, okay, it's good to honor your word, but things change in life. Like sometimes if you have a change of heart, it's good to discuss that. But this kind of almost like stubborn, idealistic, toddler-like understanding is like, okay, I made a promise. That means I would rather die than break it. But sometimes things change in life. This kind of like very rigid obligation and duty to promises you made to your loved ones. Yeah. And if you struggle with this kind of enmeshed identity, this kind of fear to separate and guilt, you know it is scary as hell to confront that and change, right? Which is why it's very important to have the support of an attuned therapist, not a drag therapist. Someone with whom you can deconstruct and understand with curiosity these family dynamics that you come from. And how you can still be loving and caring towards your family, but know how to separate a little bit. You don't have to melt into the other person, girl. We don't need to melt. We're not candles, all right? In other words, just go to therapy, girl. Now, I don't know if Dunya goes to therapy. Maybe she is, but she could benefit from it, as we all can. Now, I don't mean to diminish her bond with her mom. Her mom looks adorable as hell. She's like a giant baby. Like, I find her very cute. And the bond and the love between them is very sweet. But something about it stood out and really reminded me of myself. How when you love someone, you can lose yourself in it. And I think this is what made her attractive to Shafi. Maybe low-key, maybe again subconsciously. Because from the very beginning, he was talking about what he loves about her is her purity and lack of experience. Like when he was telling Dunya's mom when he first met her, what he likes about Dunya is that you can't find girls like this. In other words, like virgins, basically. Also at the proposal in the pause, when he called her like the cleanest, purest soul, and she was crying, it's like, it's giving virgin talk.
قال لي إنه until now he feels like أنا أنظف أروح أتعرف عليها.
But to take it back to Dunya and this kind of like long-term effects of being enmeshed, really like this stuff lasts into adulthood where you become inflexible.
ولو ينقطع جسمي والدم يسيل.
This romanticizing of pain and drama in relationships becomes something that you accept as part and parcel of intimacy when you come from an enmeshed family dynamic. And the tricky thing with being raised in an enmeshed family dynamic is that because those initial love connections are not super healthy, you struggle to form healthy bonds later on in life, not just in love, but also in friendships. New friends or potential partners always get pushed aside when they contradict the needs of the parent and the family that you feel too guilty to leave.
ما في إنسان في هذه الدنيا حيجي ياخذ مكان ماما.
And you really see how that translates in romantic relationships for Dunya and adulthood basically, and how comfortable she is with Shafiq just shutting her up. When Noor was telling her like, my advice is to look at your man, not at other girls, he was immediately just shutting her, just the body language.
أنا عندي نصيحة لإله ونصيحة لدنيا.
Nothing to say to Dunya. She don't need your advice. She don't need the advice of anyone.
فهي بدل ما تحارب البنات اللي عم تلتقى فيهم وعم تحس بإنسكيورتي تجاههم تشتغل على ثقتها بحالها وثقتها بالبارتنر اللي معها.
What was very interesting, what Noor was telling her is, don't pay attention to me and other girls. There's going to be a million girls like me. If you think I'm flirting with your man, many girls are going to flirt with your man. But what about your man and how you see him? But Dunya is not ready to see any flaws in her man. She just wants to see him as the prince who doesn't make mistakes. But if I'm being honest, maybe that's not just Dunya. Maybe that's all of us. All the girls in the pods and all of us outside in the world. When we fall in love, we become blind.
Do not lie passively waiting, dependent on some prince, because you will be screwed. In this case, literally.
Now, to wrap this up, let's talk about ending this cycle of enmeshment. Like, how do you begin having healthy relationships? Breaking free from a dysfunctional enmeshed family dynamic requires the help of a therapist, first and foremost. And it would be extra beneficial if the other people in the enmeshed family dynamic are willing to go to therapy together. That's beautiful. I mean, it may not always happen, but that's even better if that works. But still, without it, you can go by yourself and really look honestly at what's going on. And I have to say, because I hinted at like enmeshed family dynamic in my family, like with my mother's made so much progress, like in the past couple of years, as we all did. Because when you grow and when you become honest with yourself, like it becomes kind of contagious. Everybody's doing. You don't know chicken or the egg. You don't know who's affecting who. And it's really beautiful to see people making change, especially when they get older. Like I started changing when I passed 40, and now my mother is changing as well. So it's actually really beautiful. And I have some tips for ending enmeshment, things that you can practice. I picked up from therapists throughout the years. Start by learning how to set and protect personal boundaries. Think about the times you felt resentful or underappreciated by your family. Those are probably the times when your boundaries were broken. So first of all, basically learn how to notice. And more practical things you can do, you can cultivate your own interest, start engaging in activities that boost your self-esteem, and avoid making decisions based on guilt. Make an effort to do things without your family. Still love your family and be with your family, but make an effort to do things outside the family as well. Even if it feels unnatural in the beginning. Spend time with people you admire, people who have been able to break that bond. And those are the kind of people who are not angry at their family. Those are the kind of people who are actually very loving and forgiving towards their family, because they were able to break free. Not people who are bitter and resentful about their family, because we need to stay far away from those people. Okay? And if you're a parent, learn to create an identity separate from your children. For the love of God, girl. And encourage independence in your children. And finally, to get honest with yourself about the roots of all this. Again, not to blame your parents or to dig in trauma in the past, but to understand where things came from.
True love, our true soul partners, will only be discovered after a process of discernment of self and other. But none of these valuable life lessons are being taught to our children in the Disney stories. So they live their lives, our children, believing that it's this unattainable fantasy, and anything other than that is simply too excruciating to bear.
And that happens because enmeshed parents teach their kids to sanitize pain, to hide pain, because they can't bear to see the pain in their children.
Because it is we who are so scared to confront our emptiness. Because in our naivety, we believe emptiness means nothingness. If only we realize that it is when we surrender to that emptiness, it is essentially fullness and oneness. But that emptiness is so terrifying to touch that we will avoid it at all costs. So we will inject fullness in our lives in any other way possible. Anything to give an appearance of fullness. It doesn't matter if the end result is a bland rendition of what was, an overproduced, tightly controlled micromanagement, as long as it denies what lies underneath.